The desert at night was endless. Cold winds swept across the dunes, shaping them like waves of a frozen ocean. There was no life, no sound, only silence under the wide black sky. Yet, beneath that silence, something enormous slept. Something not of this world. A small group of travelers drove their old truck across the empty land. They were hunters of scrap, men who searched for metal, wires, and anything they could sell. The desert often gave them nothing. But this night was different. The truck suddenly shook. One of the wheels had struck something solid buried under the sand. The driver cursed and stopped. They stepped out, expecting a rock. But when their flashlights shined, what they saw was not stone. A smooth, curved surface, black as night, peeked through the sand. It reflected the moonlight strangely, almost like liquid frozen into metal. One man bent down and brushed away more sand. His fingers trembled as he felt the cold surface. "This is not from here," he whispered. The others gathered around. Their shovels dug quickly, throwing sand aside. The more they uncovered, the stranger it became. The surface stretched wider, curved in unnatural ways, carved with glowing lines that shimmered faintly in the dark. It was not a rock. It was not a plane. It was a ship, a massive starship, broken and buried for ages. They froze, staring at the alien ruin. A low hum came from deep within, so soft it was almost imagined. But the men felt it, not through their ears, but in their bones. The ship was not entirely dead. Something still lived inside. Fear filled them. Some wanted to leave, to cover the ship again and never return. But their leader, an older man with sharp eyes, stood firm. "This is not junk," he said. "This is power. Whoever left it here never wanted us to find it. That means it's valuable." They covered the exposed metal quickly, hiding it from the open sky. But they could not hide what had already begun. When they returned to the city, whispers spread like fire. Soon, scientists and soldiers came. Trucks rolled silently into the desert. Floodlights rose. A secret camp appeared overnight. And beneath the guarded tents, work began. For the first time in centuries, the buried starship saw the light of day. Weeks passed. Machines tore away the sand. The ship's body slowly emerged, black and scarred. Its surface bore wounds of war, burned holes, shattered plating, and long cracks that looked like claw marks from some impossible battle. Inside, the corridors smelled of ash and metal dust. The walls were covered with strange alien writing, carved deeply as if in desperation. Symbols glowed faintly, fading in and out like dying embers. Scientists argued whether they were warnings or prayers. None could understand, but all felt the same chill when they read them. In the heart of the ship, they found a chamber sealed by a door larger than any human had ever seen. The door pulsed faintly, lights blinking around its frame, though no wires connected. When touched, it vibrated softly, like the throb of a heartbeat. And then it happened. A voice spoke. Not clear, not human, just broken whispers, a language no one understood. But its tone was enough to freeze every soul in the chamber. It sounded desperate, like a ghost begging in the dark. Some scientists wanted to stop. They said the ship was cursed, dangerous, left behind for a reason. But the military men only saw opportunity. "This is a weapon," one officer said. "If it can be rebuilt, it will belong to us." The leader of the project stood before the silent ship. He placed his hand on its cold surface and spoke with conviction. "The aliens left it to die, but we will make it live again. What they abandoned, we will turn into strength." Outside, the desert wind howled. The moon cast silver light across the dunes, as if the earth itself was watching. And deep inside the starship, something stirred. A faint hum spread through its walls, growing stronger, steadier, almost like a pulse. It was waking. The humans did not yet know what they had found, nor what danger it carried. But one truth was certain: this discovery would not remain silent for long. The desert had given up its secret, and the galaxy would soon hear humanity's answer. The sun had risen high above the desert camp, yet the strange starship seemed untouched by heat or light. Its black metal shone dully, swallowing the daylight instead of reflecting it. Soldiers stood guard around the site, rifles ready, though no enemy could be seen. The real enemy, perhaps, was hidden inside the wreck. Scientists worked restlessly. They carried scanners, cameras, and strange tools into the hollow halls of the alien ship. Every corridor smelled of dust and burnt stone, as if fire had once raged there and never left. The deeper they went, the stranger it felt. The air grew heavier, filled with whispers that no one wanted to admit hearing. One young scientist stopped in front of a wall. Symbols had been carved into the metal with sharp precision. At first glance, they looked like art, but the longer he stared, the colder he felt. "These are not decorations," he said softly. "They are warnings." His superior frowned. Warnings of what? No one could answer. The symbols glowed faintly, a dull red that pulsed like veins. Some lines looked like stars, others like twisted creatures with long arms and burning eyes. The carvings almost seemed alive, as if watching the humans who dared to enter. In another corridor, soldiers found a large panel sealed with alien locks. Unlike the other broken doors, this one was intact. When touched, it hummed violently, sending a shock through the soldier's arm. He pulled back with a curse, but the door began to glow with strange blue patterns. And then it spoke. A voice echoed through the hall, low, broken, filled with static. The words were alien, unrecognizable, but the tone was unmistakable. It was a warning. The soldiers raised their rifles. The scientists froze in terror. The voice repeated again and again, each time sounding more desperate, as if it was begging them not to open the sealed chamber. But humans are curious by nature. The project leader, a stern man with eyes that never softened, stepped forward. "This is not danger," he said. "This is knowledge. If they sealed something here, it means it was valuable. And what is valuable to them will be powerful to us." The others hesitated, but orders were orders. The work continued. Days passed, and more symbols were uncovered. Every room carried the same message, though no one could translate it. Drawings of shattered worlds, fleets burning, and creatures screaming in the dark lined the walls. Some scientists believed the ship had been cursed. Others thought it was a warning of a war lost long ago. But at night, when the desert grew silent again, the whispers inside the ship grew louder. Guards swore they heard footsteps in the halls, though no one was there. Tools went missing, lights flickered, and some workers refused to enter the ship at all. Still, the leader pushed forward. "Fear is weakness," he declared. "This ship is not our enemy. It is our weapon." Finally, the sealed chamber was opened. Sparks flew as machines cut through the alien lock. The heavy door groaned, shaking the floor as it slid open. Inside, the chamber was pitch black. A cold air rushed out, smelling of rust and death. Floodlights revealed what was inside. Rows of strange pods lined the walls, their glass cracked, their contents long gone. But in the center stood a console glowing faintly, waiting to be touched. The surface was covered with alien writing, and one symbol repeated more than any other. A circle split by lightning, always painted in red. A scientist placed his hand on the console. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship shook violently, as if awakened from a nightmare. The console lit up, screens flickered, and once again the broken voice filled the room. This time, the warning was stronger. It sounded like a scream. The humans staggered back, fear gripping them. The lights across the ship turned on, corridors glowing with pale fire. It was as if the entire vessel had come alive. The hum that once felt like a heartbeat now roared like a drum. And then silence. Everyone stared at each other, breathing heavily. They knew one thing for certain. They had awakened something they did not understand. The leader, however, only smiled. "Good," he said. "If it can still speak, then it can still fight. We will make it ours." But far beyond Earth, among the stars, signals had already spread. The ship was not silent anymore. Something out there had heard, and it was coming. The ship lay half buried no more. Under bright floodlights, Its black metal skin rose from the desert like the skeleton of a fallen god. Every night, workers climbed its broken sides with ropes and machines, sparks flying as human tools cut into alien steel. For many, it felt impossible. The vessel was larger than any ship humans had ever built, heavier than any machine they had ever moved. Yet step by step, piece by piece, they began to work. Engineers set up massive cranes, dragging twisted plates from the sand. Welders climbed high, patching wounds with fire. Scientists crawled inside, studying alien circuits and strange crystals that pulsed like veins. The corridors echoed with the sounds of hammers, drills, and voices shouting over the roar of machines. But not everything welcomed repair. When the first human wires touched the alien panels, the ship reacted. Lights blinked randomly. Doors slammed shut without command. Once, a soldier was trapped for hours in a dark chamber before the door finally released him. Some believed the ship was resisting. Still, the leader pushed forward. "It does not matter if it resists," he declared. "We will tame it. We will rebuild it." Weeks turned into months. Slowly, progress showed. The ship's skeleton stood taller, its wounds patched with new metal. Inside, human screens lit up beside alien symbols. Generators hummed, feeding life into the dead heart of the beast. One night, as workers tested the engines, a sudden roar shook the desert. Flames burst from broken vents, lighting up the sky. The ground trembled, and men stumbled, covering their ears. For the first time in centuries, the alien ship had breathed again. They named it Retribution. The name spread quickly, whispered with both pride and fear. To the workers, it was a miracle, proof that humans could bend alien power to their will. But to others, it felt dangerous, as if they had awoken something that should have been left sleeping. Inside, discoveries continued. Strange weapons were uncovered. Tubes that glowed when touched, devices that bent light into deadly beams. Scientists were cautious, but the military grew excited. "With this," one officer said, "no enemy can stand against us." Yet the warnings never stopped. On the walls, the alien carvings still glowed faintly. Each time a new chamber was opened, more symbols appeared. Images of war, planets burning, fleets collapsing into fire. The scientists studied them, but no translation came. All they could agree on was that the ship had once carried destruction so vast, even its builders feared it. And sometimes, in the deep of night, the whispers returned. Guards swore they heard voices in alien tongues, drifting through empty corridors. Tools vanished. Lights flickered. More than once, a worker claimed to see a shadow move where no one stood. But progress blinded the leaders. "Superstition," they said. "We are not children. We are builders of history." Then came the day of the first test. Engines had been rebuilt with both human and alien technology. The command chamber, once dark and ruined, now glowed with a mix of Earth-made screens and alien panels that pulsed with blue light. Soldiers and scientists gathered inside, their eyes fixed on the main controls. The leader stood at the front, hand hovering over the activation switch. His voice was steady. "Tonight we see if the beast will rise." The switch was pressed. First silence. Then the ship shuddered violently, as if waking from a nightmare. Lights blazed across its hull. The engines roared like thunder. The desert shook under its power. Dust rose in clouds as the ground cracked. And then, slowly, impossibly, the ship lifted. The Retribution rose above the sands, fire spilling from its engines. It did not fly high, only hovered for minutes, trembling like a wounded animal. But to those watching, it was enough. Cheers filled the night. Humanity had done the impossible. Yet, in the distance, the stars seemed to flicker strangely. Satellites in orbit caught faint signals, pulses of energy spreading into space. Unknown, unseen, they traveled far beyond Earth. The humans did not realize what they had done. They thought they were rebuilding a gift, a weapon for their protection. But far away, across the black ocean of stars, others were listening. And they were already on their way. The beast had been rebuilt. But whose side it truly belonged to was still a mystery. Far beyond Earth, In the endless black of space, signals traveled. They were faint, broken, and centuries old, but they carried a rhythm like a pulse. The hum of a ship once abandoned had spread across the stars. In a distant system, alien warlords heard it first. Inside a fortress of steel and fire, the commanders of the Karth Dominion gathered. Their eyes, cold and sharp like blades, glowed in the darkness as the signal replayed. One alien slammed his clawed hand on the table. Impossible. That ship was left to rot on a backwater world. No creature should have touched it. Another hissed. And yet the signal is clear. The humans, they woke it. The room fell silent. Memories burned in their minds. Memories of a great war, when the ship had been their pride and their curse. The vessel, once known as Harbinger, had been too powerful, too dangerous. It had burned worlds, shattered fleets, and even threatened its own masters. In the end, they abandoned it on a distant, ignored planet Earth. It was supposed to be forgotten, one growled. Buried forever. But now it was not forgotten. Humans, small and fragile in the eyes of the Dominion, had touched it. Worse, they were repairing it. A commander leaned forward, his voice sharp with contempt. Do you know what this means? If humans master the Harbinger, they will not be prey anymore. They will be rivals. Laughter filled the chamber, cruel and confident. Humans? Rivals? They are nothing but children playing with fire. They do not know what they hold. By the time they realize, they will be ashes. The decision was made quickly. Fleets were summoned. Massive ships with spiked armor and weapons that had crushed empires. Engines roared as warships prepared for a journey across the stars. Their mission was simple: reclaim the Harbinger or burn Earth to dust. Meanwhile, on Earth, humans had no idea what was coming. At the desert site, the Retribution stood proudly above the sand. Repairs continued, but hope filled the camp. People believed they had gained the greatest weapon in history. Soldiers trained inside its halls, scientists studied its systems, and the leader walked through its corridors like a king in his new palace. But strange things kept happening. The alien symbols glowed brighter, as if aware of something far away. At night, engineers reported hearing distant thunder, though the skies were clear. The hum of the ship grew louder each day, pulsing like a heartbeat ready to burst. One scientist approached the leader with pale fear in his eyes. Sir, the signals we detect, they are not random. They are messages. The ship is calling. The leader frowned. Calling whom? The scientist's voice shook. Its masters. The words spread quickly through the camp. Soldiers grew restless, whispering about fleets of monsters flying toward Earth. Some wanted to shut the ship down, bury it again, and forget. But the leader refused. Let them come, he said coldly. If they built this weapon, then we will use it against them. Far above, beyond human sight, the alien fleets entered hyperspace. Entire armadas burned across the void, their engines glowing like angry suns. They laughed as they flew, mocking the humans who dared to touch what was not theirs. Let them think they are strong, one captain sneered. When we arrive, their cities will fall. Their skies will burn. Their little planet will remember its place. But deep inside the Retribution, the ship stirred again. Its panels glowed, its doors shook, and its voice whispered once more. It did not sound like a warning this time. It sounded like hunger. The desert wind howled, carrying sand across the night. Above, the stars glittered coldly. Somewhere in that endless sea of darkness, war was racing toward Earth. The humans celebrated their progress, proud of what they had rebuilt. They did not know that in only a short time, their skies would be filled with fire. The aliens were returning, and they were not coming in peace. The desert was silent, waiting. Floodlights glowed across the camp, shining on the massive black body of the ship. The humans called it Retribution, but it still carried the scars of its alien name. The ship stood like a giant beast reborn, patched with both human steel and alien metal. For months they had worked day and night. Now, at last, the day of its first flight had come. Inside the control chamber, the air was heavy with tension. Soldiers sat at their stations, Scientists monitored screens, and engineers whispered last-minute checks. The leader stood at the center, his hand resting on the glowing console. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with anticipation. Today, humanity rises. A low hum spread through the ship. The alien systems merged with human machines, lights blinking in patterns no one fully understood. The floor shook as power surged through the engines. The sound grew, deep and thunderous, echoing across the desert. Outside, people gathered in silence. Workers, guards, and officers all lifted their eyes as dust rose around the ship. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Then, with a deafening roar, the Retribution began to rise. Sand whipped into storms as the ship lifted from the desert floor. Its engines spat fire, brighter than the sun. The air grew heavy with heat, and the night sky turned red. Slowly, painfully, the massive beast climbed higher, shaking like a wounded animal learning to walk again. The crowd gasped, some cheering, others frozen in fear. "It's flying," someone whispered. Inside, alarms blared. Panels flickered, and sparks flew as human and alien systems clashed. The ship fought against itself, half alive, half broken. But still, it rose. The leader gripped the console tighter. "Hold it steady," he shouted. "Do not let it fall." The engines screamed louder. The desert below blurred into shadows. For a moment, it seemed the ship would collapse under its own weight. Then, with a sudden surge, it steadied. The Retribution hovered in the air, fire blazing from its engines, casting long shadows across the sand. It was alive. A roar of cheers erupted outside. Soldiers raised their fists. Workers cried with pride. For the first time in history, humanity commanded an alien warship. But the victory was not complete. Deep inside the ship, strange symbols lit up across the walls. They pulsed in rhythm with the engines, glowing brighter than ever before. Scientists stared in horror. They had seen these symbols before, warnings carved in every corridor. And now the ship was repeating them. "This is not just flight," one whispered. "It's a signal." Far above, the truth revealed itself. In the cold silence of space, shadows moved. Massive alien warships slipped from hyperspace, their hulls black and jagged, glowing with deadly red light. The Karth Dominion had arrived. From orbit, they watched the human planet with cruel amusement. Their flagship, larger than cities, opened its wings of steel. The alien commander gazed at Earth with contempt. "So," he hissed, "the insects woke the harbinger. Let them enjoy their first breath of glory. It will be their last." Back on Earth, the humans celebrated, unaware of the dark fleet hanging above their skies. The leader of the project raised his arms in triumph. "Today," he declared, "we are no longer weak. Today we hold the weapon that will change everything." But even as his words echoed, the stars above flickered. The first alien cruiser moved into Earth's orbit, its weapons glowing like suns ready to burn. Inside the Retribution, alarms screamed again. Strange codes appeared on human screens, warnings flashing in alien script. The scientists paled. "They are here," one whispered. The leader turned, his eyes cold and sharp. For a moment, silence filled the control chamber. Then he spoke, voice steady as stone. "Good. Let them come." The desert wind howled outside. The ship hung in the air, engines blazing. Above, unseen by most, the alien fleet encircled Earth like predators surrounding prey. The first flight of Retribution had begun, not just against gravity, but against destiny itself. And the war was about to start. The night sky above Earth was no longer calm. Stars flickered unnaturally, swallowed by shadows of enormous alien warships. The Karth Dominion had arrived. Their fleet spread across orbit like a wall of steel, engines glowing red, weapons humming with deadly power. From the ground, people lifted their eyes in fear. The sky seemed broken, filled with fire and black shapes. Radios screamed with warnings, governments panicked, and armies prepared. But deep in the desert, the humans who had rebuilt the alien ship stood ready. The Retribution hovered above the sand, its engines roaring like a beast hungry for war. Inside the control chamber, soldiers tightened their grips on controls. Scientists monitored the strange alien systems, and the leader stood tall, his eyes burning with determination. "They came for their ship," he said, his voice calm but fierce. "Let us show them what it has become in our hands." The engines flared brighter. With a deafening roar, the Retribution shot upward into the sky, leaving the desert behind. Dust storms followed in its wake, and the earth trembled as if a giant had leapt into the heavens. Moments later, the ship broke through the clouds, and there they were, the alien fleet, dozens of warships, each larger than any human craft, waiting like vultures. The alien commander sneered as the human vessel appeared on his screens. "Pathetic creatures. They dare challenge us with our own discarded toy." Signals were sent. Alien ships spread their wings, forming an iron cage around the earth. Weapons powered up, glowing with a deadly red light. Inside the Retribution, alarms rang as the systems detected lock-ons. Human soldiers tensed. Some felt fear crawl through their veins, but none turned away. "Arm weapons," the leader ordered. Panels glowed. Alien cannons, once silent for centuries, came alive again. Energy surged through their cores, humming with destructive power. The first attack came from the aliens. A beam of red light tore across the sky, striking the Retribution's shields. The ship shook violently, sparks flying, alarms screaming. Soldiers grabbed onto their seats as the hull groaned, but the shields held. The leader smiled grimly. "Now our turn." The Retribution fired. A blinding beam of blue-white energy erupted from its cannons, slicing through the night like a sword of light. It struck an alien cruiser head-on. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the massive ship exploded, breaking apart into burning fragments that fell toward Earth's atmosphere. The humans cheered, their voices shaking the chamber. For the first time, the galaxy's predators had been struck down by human hands. But the aliens were furious. The rest of the fleet roared forward, weapons blazing. Dozens of beams and missiles rained down upon the Retribution. Shields flared, hull plates cracked, and the ship shook under the storm. Inside, chaos filled the control room. Sparks burst from panels, smoke spread, alarms shrieked endlessly. Engineers shouted numbers, scientists screamed warnings, but the leader's voice cut through it all. "Hold the line. Fire again." The Retribution turned sharply, its engines howling. Cannons roared once more, blasting through another alien destroyer. Human hands guided alien weapons with deadly precision, and one by one, enemy ships fell burning into the void. Yet the battle was far from won. The alien flagship loomed ahead, larger than a city, its weapons glowing like a sun about to explode. It fired, and the beam struck the Retribution side. Metal tore open, flames erupted, and screams filled the corridors. The ship staggered, wounded but not broken. "We cannot take another hit like that," a scientist shouted. But the leader's eyes burned with fire. "Then we strike before they do." He gave the order. Engines roared to maximum, pushing the ship forward at impossible speed. The Retribution darted between enemy fire, weaving through explosions, climbing higher until it faced the flagship head-on. The alien commander laughed, his voice cruel. "Fools, do you think you can destroy me with my own creation?" The leader's voice was steady. "Not your creation, ours." The Retribution unleashed all its power. Every cannon fired, every weapon roared, streams of burning light tearing into the flagship's shields. The sky lit up like a second sun as explosions rippled across the alien giant. For a moment, it seemed the beast would fall. But the flagship endured, its shields holding by a thread. Then it fired again. The beam of death raced toward the Retribution. The humans braced for the end. At the last moment, the ship's alien systems surged on their own. Symbols across the walls glowed blinding white, and a shield unlike any human design snapped into place. The beam struck and broke. Silence filled the battlefield for a heartbeat. Then human and alien eyes alike understood. The ship was no longer just a tool. It was alive, and it had chosen its side. The sky above Earth burned. Broken ships drifted like corpses, their fires glowing as they fell into the planet's atmosphere. The clash had already destroyed half the alien fleet, but the battle was far from over. At the center of it all, the Retribution floated like a wounded beast. Its hull was cracked, smoke poured from its engines, and alarms screamed inside. Yet, its heart still beat. The ship was alive and it refused to fall. In the control chamber, soldiers and scientists worked frantically. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Screens flickered, showing enemy warships moving into new formation. The alien flagship still loomed ahead, massive and terrifying, its weapons glowing with deadly power. The leader stood tall in the chaos, his face marked by firelight. "We finish this now," he said, his voice calm though the ground shook beneath his feet. "The galaxy will remember this day." Outside, the alien commander watched with contempt. His voice hissed across the comms. "Humans, you are insects crawling on stolen bones. That ship is not yours. It was ours before you even learned to stand. You cannot win." But the leader only smiled coldly. "Then watch how insects bite." The Retribution surged forward. Engines roared, flames shooting from their cores as the beast dived toward the flagship. Alien cruisers moved to block its path, firing beams of light and torrents of missiles. The ship answered with fury. Cannons erupted, burning holes through enemy hulls. Explosions filled the void as alien vessels split apart, shattered into glowing fragments. For every shot the Dominion fired, the Retribution answered with two. But victory had a cost. Every hit tore more metal from its body. Corridors filled with smoke. Fire spread through lower decks, and wounded soldiers lay on the ground. Engineers screamed to keep the systems alive, their hands black with burns. The ship bled, but it still fought. Then came the final strike. The flagship opened its wings, revealing a weapon hidden in its core. Energy built in a sphere of red light, growing brighter until it shone like a false star. It was not just a cannon, it was destruction enough to burn a world. Panic filled the Retribution's chamber. "If it fires, we're finished," shouted a scientist. The leader's jaw tightened. He placed his hand on the alien console, the same one that had always pulsed like a heartbeat. "Then we strike before it breathes." The ship answered. The walls glowed with alien symbols, brighter than ever before. Lights pulsed in rhythm with the leader's heartbeat. For a moment everyone felt it. The ship was not just a machine. It was alive. It had chosen its side. The engines screamed louder than thunder. The Retribution hurled itself forward, charging straight into the flagship's cannon. The alien commander laughed bitterly. "Madness! You will die with us." The leader's voice echoed in reply, "No, we will live because of this." Every weapon on the Retribution fired at once. Beams of pure energy, missiles of burning light, torrents of fire, all unleashed together in a storm of rage. They slammed into the flagship's shields, tearing them apart layer by layer. The red glow of the alien superweapon faltered, sputtering as the defenses collapsed. And then the Retribution struck the heart. A final cannon blast pierced the core of the flagship. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the alien giant erupted into a storm of fire. The explosion lit up the heavens, brighter than the sun, shaking the earth itself. Pieces of burning steel scattered across the void. The flagship was gone. The battlefield fell silent. The remaining alien ships froze, leaderless and afraid. Then, one by one, they turned and fled, disappearing into hyperspace, leaving behind only ruins. Inside the Retribution, silence filled the chamber. Soldiers stared at the screens, unable to believe what they had done. Then cheers erupted, loud and raw. Men and women embraced, shouting with tears in their eyes. Humanity had not only survived, they had triumphed. The leader stood quietly at the console, his hand still on the glowing surface. The symbols around him faded slowly, dimming into silence. He whispered softly, not to his crew but to the ship itself. "You were their weapon. Now you are ours. Together we are Retribution." Outside, the wreck of the Dominion fleet drifted across the stars. The sky was scarred, the earth below trembling, but Earth still stood. Humanity still breathed, and in the silence of space, a new truth was born. Humans were no longer weak, no longer prey. They had taken what was abandoned, rebuilt it, and turned it into victory. The galaxy would hear of this battle. The Karth Dominion would remember their defeat. And when they returned, as they surely would not face insects. They would face the storm called humanity.